75% of them to the south, most of them to the rural south.
Or took black soldiers out of communities where they had to adhere to a certain set of social norms in which they were subservient, and opened up possibilities.
Even a segregated army gave chances for training, leadership, and advancement and recognition. Those in Europe have been treated very respectfully. First time in their lives, the color of their skin was not the predominant characteristic to which they were identified. They came home feeling like they had done their duty in defense of American democracy. But when they returned home, they largely saw nothing had changed. White Southerners in that era considered the returning soldiers to be potential trouble, not great American citizens. As some would say, they no longer knew their place.
Black soldiers were especially threatening to the racial mores that undermined segregation. Black soldiers were in uniform. They wore emblems of authority. They often carried themselves with a sense of authority that the enforcers of white supremacy found particularly threatening.
Wearing the uniform of the U.S. military grants one the prerogatives of citizenship. And Black men make no bones about the fact that they feel completely deserving of those prerogatives. And they become the target. So in 1946, what you see is one incident of racial violence after another.
All right, so that's some of that. What did you get from that film? I mean, what kind of Ben? What did you get from that?
What I got from it is that I feel like those individuals, the returning black soldiers, would have not only carried themselves with that sort of leadership, but they would have been able to be leaders in their own community, like in immediate neighborhoods for neighbors right next to them that may not have been soldiers, but still need someone to look up to as a positive African American role model.
Okay. Some of that, I think that we have to look at leaders in the community. Of course, important ideas. Really, that we're not going to accept this. Going into the army, they said, things are so different. The color of your skin was not what defined you. What defined you was what you did in the army, or how you were treated in England and France, things like this that we're going to see. So obviously, this is an important element that we need to look and that we need to understand when looking at this, because the post-World War era is going to be a very important era in bringing us really to civil rights and the struggle during that time, right? So we'll look at that. Of course, I just want to remind you, we have our exam on Thursday. If you take your notes with a laptop, you need to run those notes off because you can't use laptops or cell phones during the test. So make sure you run those off, okay, during that time. Uh,
Would it be the same as like
yeah, it'll be, but 3 of them. So, it'll be covering, from the last exam. So World War One, Great Migration, uh, things like that, right? World War Two, New Deal, and then today's lecture, of course. So those kind of things that you'll know to be able to use, and of course, you'll be able to use your notes, obviously. So do that and bring. Um, but anyway, after World War II, as I said, back to this is a very important era of transition to more of a fight for civil rights. And I think we're going to see somewhat that the United States, at least, is going to also be involved in this transition of what's going on during this time. Remember we have talked about how the racism and racial relations, things like that, were really seen as the South's dirty little secret. And to go along, of course, the United States dirty little secret, right? And as long as the United States was over here and wasn't trying uh, to become more of a leader in the world, then they could maybe get away with that dirty little secret. But after World War II, really, even beginning earlier, World War II, things like that, the nation is now trying to become a leader, trying to become one of the leading countries. And they want people to look up to them and look up to them for our democracy. And it should be looked up to, but if it's not actually lived up to, then that's a question. So the United States, as we're going to see, is going to be confronted with this question, aren't they? They're going to be confronted with the question of how do we put forth the idea that we are a great nation or whatever when we're not living up to it. And so at least some people in the government and elsewhere in the North and the West begin to question segregation. The South, however, is very determined to continue segregation. That this is what we fought for and we're going to continue this, right? Of course, we saw that African Americans aren't not willing to accept Jim Crow as the way they have, right? And of course, that's gonna scare many segregation. But they're also scared that now the government, the federal government, seems to not be accepting our dirty little secret anymore. That they're starting to point out our dirty little secret. And other people are starting to point out. So we have to look at why now, in this period after World War II, that we're going to see more the federal government, as we talked about in the New Deal, there was a lot of positive rhetoric and things that might have helped the Black community, right? But what we're going to see is really nothing's done for civil rights because of the fear Franklin Roosevelt had of losing votes and his political future, right? So what we have to look at is Harry Truman. Harry Truman. That really Harry Truman, who became president in 1945 is going to be the first president, really, since Abraham Lincoln, that has done anything for civil rights during so we have to look at it. And I think one thing we have to recognize is the political courage of Harry Truman to do something that Franklin Roosevelt talked about but never did. And so, it's not a great amount, but it is an amount that we have to look at during this time. And what we're going to see, Harry Truman is especially concerned about what has happened after the war to one veteran. For example, it takes really this to pick to understand and recognize the issue and the problem that is in the United States. For example, Isaac Woodward was discharged from the Army. He was honorably discharged with other black and white veterans. Many of them got on the bus at Augusta, Georgia. He was going back to his home in South Carolina. So there were many veterans on the bus. There were white veterans there. There were black veterans there. A bottle of whiskey got opened up, of course. We're getting out of the Army. So we're going to celebrate that, things like that. There's no evidence that anyone was drunk at that time, but we should at least know that there was a bottle of whiskey. But anyway, what we're going to see is that Isaac Woodward, of course, as we know, the more you drink, the more you have to go to the restroom, right? So he goes up to the driver and he says to the driver, at the next stop, could I please get off and go and use the restroom? Right? Now, in the South, of course, one thing that they were bothered by was, of course, were a symbol of authority. They were a symbol of authority. Right? They were also somewhat confused, the civilian and the bus driver, that the white and black veterans were together. They were acting together. They were laughing together, sitting together during that time. And what we're going to see is the white community, somewhat segregationists, are now going to even be tougher on Jim Crow and on these ideas. To make sure, because we're afraid that the African Americans have now gained pride and authority during that time. So he goes up and he asks if he can go to the bathroom. The bus driver is going to say, hell no. God damn it, go back and sit down. I ain't got no time to wait. So he does that. Now, Isaac Woodward answers in number 3. God damn it, talk to me like I'm a man, like I'm talking to you. I am a man just like you. So what is it that he is saying? What's he saying, Stephanie?
That I'm a man, that I'm just as worthy as respect as a human being.
I'm a man, I'm worthy of respect, right, during that time. And I have got in the Army, I have gained that confidence, haven't I? gain that confidence that allows me to stand up during this stuff and say, respect me, just like he said. Actually, what we're going to see is the bus driver is going to stop. He's going to find a police officer. They're going to be waiting for Isaac Woodward when he gets off. They're going to beat him, take him out, take him around the corner into an alley, beat him so much that he is going to go blind. The next day, there's a court case about this, because actually who's arrested? Isaac Woodward is arrested during this time. The judge says he wasn't blind when he came into court, but that was another lie that they told to protect this. They told he was intoxicated, that there was about this, and it was found guilty. So Isaac Woodward is found guilty by the Illinois jury. NAACP takes this case up. They say we're going to use the publicity from this case, right? So for us, is that do. Hopefully, we'll get the federal government to do something. Truman is going to read about this, and when he meets with the NAACP, he's going to say, my God, I had no idea it was as terrible as that. Talk about the improvement of our democratic system. So we have to do something. Obviously, it's going to say. So really, I think this Isaac is a catalyst, right, during this time, that it's going to kind of open up Harry Truman's eyes at this time. Actually, he writes in a letter to a friend, the main difficulty with the South is that they are living 80 years behind the time. The sooner they come out of it, the better it will be for the country and themselves. So he's saying, you're just out of step with the country. You have to get better. So this is important because Harry Truman is going to start to actually do stuff. For example, Harry Truman is the first president that meets with and gives a speech to a convention of the NAACP. It is my deep conviction that we have reached a turning point in our country's effort to guarantee freedom and equality to all our citizens. Recent events in the United States and abroad have made us realize that it is more important today than ever before to ensure that all Americans enjoy these rights. When I say all Americans, I mean all Americans. All right? This is, may not sound like a lot, but for Harry Truman to do this, for Harry Truman to go to the NAACP at this time, is an important idea. And what Harry Truman does, which goes beyond the rhetoric, giving a speech like that doesn't mean anything, does it? But he's gonna say, okay, let's kind of do something. I'm gonna set up a committee to give us a report on civil rights. I want a committee to write up a report. It's called To Secure These Rights, which comes out after the war in 1946. And it starts, we can tolerate no restrictions upon the individual which depend upon irrelevant factors such as his race, his color, his religion, or the social now look at this. Look at this quote from the report. And what does this seem to say? What does this seem to say, Jason?
That throughout the Cold War, we were effectively engaged in a, for lack of a better term, popularity contest. And it's hard to win a popularity contest when you're actively bullying your own people.
So it is. You're right. That's a good word. Popular. I kind of said it's kind of like trying to get likes and dislikes on your whatever, your Facebook, right? And that's it. So the Soviet Union, how many people can they get to like them? The U.S. says how many like us. Now the U.S. has a real problem, right? And their problem is this. So how can the United States tolerate discrimination within its borders and expect the rest of the world to believe its political and economic systems are superior to the economy? So, it's one thing to say, oh, look at us, we're so democratic. If you don't live up to it, it's hard to do that. So, to look at this, we've got to look at why the government, why does the federal government start to change? What are the reasons behind doing it? Why are they going to start saying, we got to do something about civil rights? They're very slow, as we're going to see. But why do they do that? Improvement of international reputation. An American diplomat cannot argue for free elections in foreign lands without meeting the challenge that in sections of America, qualified voters do not have access to the vote. And our domestic civil rights shortcomings are a serious obstacle, right? So we need to international reputation better. Here's another one. The report also cataloged ways in which racial prejudice hampered the growth of the American economy. Bias cost the economy money in markets that were closed back black consumers. In the depression of minority wages. So what they're saying, when you pay minorities lesser wages, they can buy less stuff, right? And of course that hurts the economy too. And you have to, in the South, you have to have two school systems. Right? And I spend a lot on the black community, but still, you have to have it. Furthermore, the economy lost millions of dollars from disturbance. So, what have we seen? Why are they saying we have to do something? What are the reasons that we, the United States, has to be better on civil rights? What two reasons that we've talked about? Excuse me. Image, right? John?
Because a democratic country.
Yeah, more democratic image and everything like that, Ben.
I was going to say for the economy.
And the economy too. Okay, so really those are the basic ones that come out in this to secure the right. All right? What is this? Are these good arguments, Jason?
Whatever gets us there.
Whatever gets you that, okay.
Well, it's not exactly for, the black community.
It doesn't seem to be saying, hey, we've got to do it because it's morally wrong. Whatever. And, but like Jason said, maybe whatever gets you. But this is it. So this report said what you have to do is you have to put a long-lasting, permanent, fair employment practices commission together. Remember the one that A. Philip Randolph had got? It was only good for the war years. So I said, you need to continue that, the report said. And you need to have an anti-lynching on it, and an anti-poll act. Now, what is wrong with that? Southern congressmen are gonna block it every time. So there's no way that we can pass any. Now, look at this letter and read this letter, please, to yourself and tell me what it says. Okay, what do you get, Samantha? We have the power. What power do I have? What's it called today? Executive privilege, right? During that time. So we have it. So what's he saying? There's some stuff you can't do. You have to have like an anti-lynching law. You can't pass or whatever. But there's other stuff you can do. So you need to do this. So they're saying you need to do something like this. So what do you get from this letter from to say why else the government might have become more involved in civil rights in the struggle? What do you get from this letter? What's it say here? What's the second sentence? And what's it say? You can't cement what? You can win re-election. So what is another might be motive that the government gets involved? Might be political to win, right? We have international reputation, saving, and really the political ideas. Hey, Phil Brandolph, what's he doing? Now, what is his idea for trying to get, remember, because one thing he wanted, he didn't only want the industries changed when he talked to FDR in 1941. What else did he want? See the military integrated. Now that didn't happen, did it? But so we still have this issue. And A. Philip Randolph, what's his way of protest? By looking at this picture. Excuse me? Picketing, right? Good. Very. So here he is at the Democratic National Convention in 1948. Picketing. Prison is better than Army Depot service. We demand an executive order outline. You can do this. You don't need Congress, right? And where it won't pass. Do it. So get something done. I'm going to pressure you to do it. If we took it to court, it might take 2-3 years. But now it's right in Harry Truman's face. And what's going to happen is A. Philip Randolph is going to write Harry Truman. Because our belief that the president, as commander in chief, is is morally obligated to issue such an order now. Unless this is done, Negro youth will have no alternative but to resist the law, the inevitable consequence of which would be to expose them to the un-American brutality so familiar during the last war. Negroes will not take Jim Crow laws lying down. The conscience of the world will be shaken by nothing else than thousands and thousands of second-class Americans choose imprisonment to permanent military slavery. So what is he saying here? Are we going to do? What are we going to do if you don't integrate the military? What are we going to do? What are we going to do, Jason?
Quit joining in those.
Quit
that are already
joining?
reserved.
And when we get told to serve, we're going to throw it in the trash, right? Now, what's going to happen if we throw it in the trash? Be arrested, aren't we? But how is that going to shape the world's conscience? Do you think, Lewis?
Well, the world would see the U.S. arresting able-bodied men because they don't want to fight for rights that they're not going to get.
Why do you not want to fight for the United States? And then they're going to find out. And so it will be. So what is A. Philip Randolph saying? I'm using this, aren't I? I'm going to use this to shine the light of hypocrisy if you don't do something. So what's he doing? I mean, some of you wrote kind of blackmailing. Is it kind of blackmail? Well, if you want to say it that way, you can say it. But really, it's saying that I'm going to show that this is the way to get something done. If we believe this strongly, and we do believe this strongly, this is the idea. So this is it. We're in no mood to shoulder a rifle for democracy abroad as long as they are denied democracy at home. So we're talking about this, right? About this. And this is going to happen in 1948, right? Now, what is the big issue, the big war, I guess, that's going on during this time? Cold War. There's no actual fighting between the U.S. and Soviets. There are two wars, but there's this idea. But we never know. We never know when there's going to be actual fighting, do we, during that time? And, for example, at this time, the Berlin air crisis, or the Berlin airlift, has taken place. And that could have started a war. And Harry Truman said, I need all the able-bodied men I can get to join the army or be elected. So I can't put up with what A. Philip Randolph is doing, right? So what is A. Philip Randolph's brilliance? What is A. Philip Randolph's brilliance here, do you think? What had he done? He said, just like I did in 1941, wasn't it? And now I'm taking advantage of this, aren't I? So this kind of idea. So he said, I'm going to make Harry Truman do it. Got to look at activists, A. Philip Randolph. He might be making the government do a little bit too. So he's going to June 26, 1948, the Executive Order 9981 is passed. President Harry Truman says from now on, the military should be integrated. The military should be integrated, okay? Why is that an important thing? Why do you think that's an important thing? Why do you think? Who has an idea that method?
Fight together instead of apart.
Well, fighting together, yeah, that would be important. That is important, of course. That shows, we're together, Jason.
Black people not have the opportunity to rise up.
If we can rise up, say, there were some officers, not many, but there were some officers as well. But I think the legacy is, and the draft goes on from 1948 through 1972. So every year there are going to be young men drafted. For example, a lot of you young men might be in the military now for a year or maybe 2 years, whatever, because of this. So your education will take a little time. Actually, one thing that it was that all the time there was kind of if you made pretty good, if you were in college and made pretty good grades, you were probably not going to get drafted during that time. Especially, during Vietnam and things, but even before that, there was somewhat of this idea. But the legacy is, I think, that these white supremacists from Birmingham, Alabama, or Monroe, Louisiana, are going into the Army, and the Army is integrated. And some of it's going to start taking, for example, when WT was going to integrate, they asked one student how he felt about this, and he said, well, I was in the Army, and so I have learned that we can get along. So this is an important idea, I think, that we have to look at, and the legacy of this. Black military veteran says the thing that you leave with is a sense of assertiveness, a sense of self-esteem. That's very important, an important idea that they're going to have. So, of course, that's strong to look at. Now, I also remember we mentioned that Harry Truman had somewhat political courage by making. Why did he have political courage, do you think?
Since Truman represented the federal government as the president, he was saying we are taking a stance, a formal stance against racial inequality in America.
So he does that, but what could he lose by doing it? Especially Southern whites, right? Southern congressmen. What are they going to do? How can we, the Southern Democrats, allow the party to nominate someone? Remember, it's now easier to nominate, isn't it? Now it only takes 51% of the delegates, and the South can't block it. So when the South can't block it, what do? They say, heck, we're gonna create our own party that you're not gonna have. So they walk out. Southerners walk out of the Democratic Convention and say, we're gonna start the States' Rights Party. The States' Rights Party. But really what they're about is saying we stand for the segregation of the races. And so what they do is they nominate Strom Thurmond for president. they think he's gonna win? No, they don't think he's gonna win. They are hoping that we'll take enough votes away from Harry Truman that he will lose. And then the Republicans during that time. And actually, the States' Rights Party in 1948 is going to get the electoral votes that usually were Democratic from South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. Okay, during that time. Now, of course, who wins the election of 1948? Does a Republican because of all this? No. Harry Truman wins, doesn't he, Lewis? Harry Truman wins. And I don't know, this used to be a popular picture that was shown. I don't know, have any of you ever seen this? Actually, what it was in Chicago, the newspaper, there was a big strike and they said, we don't have enough, so we're gonna print the paper early. And since they were so sure that Truman would lose and that the Republican Dewey would win, they printed that early. But what happened is that, remember the Great Migration? Take care. Remember that brought a lot of blacks into the North where we could vote, they said. And because of Harry Truman and what he was doing for civil rights, although not a lot, he wins black votes. And they helped him to win, like California, Illinois, Ohio, states that were usually Republican. So this is now, as we saw last time, during the New Deal, the Democrats were saying, there was a lot of votes out there. But now the Democrats have learned we need those votes to be able to win. And we do win the election. Now, Harry Truman does not do very much in his second term for civil rights, really. But at least that's important that he starts doing so. All right? Now, what I want to look at is how does the Cold War impact civil rights in the United States and the government? And first thing we have to look at is the Red Scare, right? Diego, have you heard of the Red Scare? Of course you have.
Scare?
Yeah, what is it?
Communism.
Fear of communists, that communists were in the United States. Well, what we're going to see is segregationists are going to use this to try to hurt the civil rights movement. Anyone who is called a communist in the United States would hurt the civil rights movement, right? During that time. Here is one of the quotes. If someone insists there is discrimination against Negroes in this country, there is reason to believe that person is a communist. A communist. And there have been a lot of really association between the Communist Party and African Americans from really early on, from 1919, for example. The communists, the Reds, tried to stir Negroes to revolt, and actually they kind of did. Communists said, hey, African Americans can lead the revolution. Hey, because of the terrible ways that they are being treated by this country. And so they talk about all these things. And whites are going to accept this in Texas, for example. They're going to say, sign of being a communist is the belief in complete and full social equality among the races. So that is a member of the Texas state government at this time. Here's a Texas representative. Throughout the South today, subversive elements are attempting to convince the Negro that he should be placed on social equality with white people, that now the time for him to assert his rights. So really, what is this saying? Whose fault is this fight for civil rights?
The communists.
The communists have convinced African Americans to do this. We're going to see that actually the Communist Party had helped the black community more than a lot of other people. And were somewhat involved. For example, 1931, the depth of the Great Depression, people are looking for jobs, right? Young people looking for jobs, black young people, or white young people, they're on catching a freight train. You've probably seen that, right? Jumping on a freight train during this time. Well, on this freight train in Alabama, there are whites and blacks, and they kind of scuffle a little and maybe a little fight or whatever. But then when they get to Scottsboro, Alabama, there are two white girls that are going to say, we were raped by these 9 young men that become known as the Scottsboro during that time. They go into a court, they're tried. Of course, what does the court do in about 4 minutes? Find them guilty. They're going to be executed. Would have been executed if not for the Communist Party. The Communist Party said this was not at all a fair trial. First, there was not a jury of the peers, right? For example, it was on a white jury during that time. Another thing that had a little influence was that about 1,000 white angry mob showed up on the courthouse lawn. Thank you. On the courthouse lawn, and they were protesting and howling and whatever they did during that time. But luckily, the Communist Party is there to make sure they were at least not executed already. The NAACP finally gets involved a little later during that time. But a lot of people say, well, the Communist Party did something for us, right? Other people, for example, here is a Howard Johnson, a man who joined it during this time, okay? What is Howard Johnson saying? What do you think, James? Read this and tell me. Why did I join the party?
Amongst all the other organizations that weren't really doing anything, this organization was actually putting their foot forward and trying to make progress, is what he said.
I don't believe in communism. I don't believe that you should overthrow the United States. I don't believe this crap, right? But I do believe that at least the Communist Party is helping. At least they're trying to help us. So this, I think, is an important idea. And this is why some other people start saying, maybe it is. Paul Robeson, for example, was an actor who joined the Communist Party. He said, by the 1950s, he said, I don't believe that we should fight in a war against the Soviet Union. I mean that we, African American soldiers, we shouldn't join because what are we fighting for this Jim Crow society that we live in during this time? Actually, what we're going to see, the U.S. is going to take away his passport because we don't want him going anywhere. Actually, he had been in the Soviet Union, things like that during that time. And other blacks joined the Communist Party. The majority of African Americans did not join the Communist Party. But that was it. So now they're seen as communists, especially civil rights organization might be a communist party. People are going to say the NAACP is led by communists. For example, Alabama in the 1950s is going to outlaw the communists, or outlaw the NAACP during this time that we're going to see. So people are going to, segregationists are using this, aren't they? They're using it to say, we're not evil fighting civil rights necessarily, we're fighting against the communists. Aren't all Americans supposed to do that? And so segregationists can say, look at us, we are pro-American, not anti-civil rights, we're pro-American, right? During this time. And if you're for civil rights, then you could be a communist too. And if you are known as a communist, what could happen to you? You could lose your job or anything like that, right? But the governor of Texas, Governor Price Daniels, said in 1960 after the sit-in, stirring of strife and dissension is a known communist thing. The communists are behind it. Many of these, and the Texas is going to investigate this. Can you believe they say something like this? Many of these individuals and organizations have been identified as an actual part of the communist conspiracy, taking orders from Moscow. What are they saying? What are they saying, Diego? It's the communists are telling civil rights organizers what to do, activists what to do. It's them. For example, let's look at this one. Every group this is Moses Leroy, who was a civil rights activist, okay? Now, Alicia, what do you think that this might be saying? What do you think Moses Leroy might be saying? What do you think, Matthew?
I think he's just trying to say that no matter like what they try to do, that there's white supremacy.
Yeah, I mean, they can take communists. And Houston, we're making groups that might be for civil rights. Well, can the white segregationists come out and say, well, we don't like civil rights, so don't do this? A lot of people are saying, oh, come on, this isn't such a big deal. But if they can say you're communist, that's another thing, isn't it? And we got to do away with the communists, right, during that time. Now, here is a handbill that was given out by activists, civil rights activists in cities. Okay? What is he saying, do you think, Annabelle? Nikita Khrushchev was the leader of the Soviet Union. So what do you think, Jason?
He's just saying to the segregationists and to the white supremacists, like, we're not communists. We
We're
sit
not
down and talk about
communists.
this like human beings.
Right. So what, in America, what is the most, I guess, best thing in our society? Having free conversation over this, right?
Or the chances of economic prosperity and with the communists.
Oh, there's this idea, right, that we can have this. So this idea, now, this is what we're having, okay? All right, so you can see that the Red Scare kind of was a negative, and that kind of hurt the civil rights movement. But we're going to look at the Cold War overall, and we have to say that the Cold War overall makes it where the U.S. government has to start doing something. Okay? Let's look at this. Look at this. What's this? This is a Russian propaganda, right? And what are they saying here? Freedom the American way. What's that mean? What are they saying? In this shot?
It's not preaching about freedom, but they themselves are not doing it. They have explain, they have segregation and stuff like that.
Here's the freedom you get in America. Why? What? Look at Statue of Liberty's mouth. First it's locked up. Then you have the Ku Klux Klan here. Whatever. The cop with his billy club. So really, what's it saying? If you're looking at this, what is it saying, Joshua?
I feel like it's trying to also show like that's everything wrong about that society.
Everything. Why would you want to be there, friend? Why don't you come over and join the Soviet Union, right? During that.
That the life and liberty that Americans speak so proudly of is not true either.
Yeah. So they're saying that. They're saying this idea. Now, if you're in the U.S. government, how do you feel about this poster?
Fearful
We feel bad about it because what's it doing?
because
Convincing people.
and showing the world that we aren't what we say we are.
And then it could hurt us, couldn't it? During that time. Now, so is this really propaganda? If it's true, it's not a whole lot of propaganda. Of course, maybe some of the things they're overdoing a little, but the reality is it's not a whole lot. Here we have a quote from the Undersecretary of State, 1946. What's the Ryan? What do you get from this one?
It's just saying that other countries aren't going to respect us because of.
They can't, they can't do this. We have this. So the government has a real problem. The question here. We have to do something for this, for our reputation. But how do we do this with South? We can't lose all our political control. Racial discrimination furnishes scripts for the communist propaganda mills, and it raises doubt even among the friendly nations as to the intensity of our devotion to democracy. So even countries that like us have to start saying, are they really devout? Are they really like it? For example, if you're an American diplomat going to India, what do you have to explain? What's going on in our country, right? How the Jim Crow is occurring and all that. And why do you expect India to join you when the way you treat people from India is, is terrible? Soviet Union doesn't do that. I mean, they're not good, but at least they don't do that during that time. A German citizen says to a black U.S. soldier, "It's funny that you're over here to protect us from the Russians when there's no one to protect your people from the KKK and white America. So you're over here doing what the U.S. tells you to do, but then back at home, they're not." So again, that contradiction, isn't it? So the U.S. says, you know what? We're some pretty, it doesn't sound good. Because at this time, especially in the 1960s, you have a lot of new nations, Asian nations, African nations, Latin American nations. And they're saying, hey, why should we join you, right? Why should we want to be part of what you talk about? For example, let's say, and then this did happen in 1955 in Houston, diplomat from India landed at the Houston airport. And the diplomat from India was segregated, was Jim Crow. So what's this doing? What do I do when I go home? Or whatever. I'm a diplomat. Can I, for example, if I'm a diplomat from an African nation, can I suddenly say I can stay anywhere that I want to? I can go to any movie? No, I cannot do that, right? During that time. But the United States is widely regarded as the home of democracy and the leader of the struggle for freedom, for human rights, dignity. So our failure to live up to our proclaimed ideas are noted and magnified and distorted. Let's look at that last one, that last sentence there. What's he saying there? All of you have said it. Yes, Sean.
So it's saying the failure of having a democracy is being lauded and being magnified by other countries, by the Soviet Union.
Yeah, you see it, the Soviet Union putting it out there for everyone to see it, right, Samantha?
They're so worried about the Soviet Union's form of government whenever their form of government is causing changes.
We have to change. But it's even distorted. Stuff that is not as bad becomes, well, it's the U.S. Yes, it is bad. It is Jim Crow. So we gotta change our ways. So whenever we see changes in the U.S. government, a lot of it is because, hey, we hurt our reputation, right? We want to keep a strong reputation during this time. They'll say the federal government, you need to make reform. We're losing our prestige. if we can just make a little reform, make things a little better, you know, get involved trying to stop civil rights violations, things like that during that time, that will at least help us out. We can't expect diplomats to drive into the South and not be served. That's not right. We have to change it. So this is why the government starts to change during that time. So this is going to be it. Why the government? So the government changing, they're starting to change because they say, us, it's hurting us. It's because of the publicity. Remember the quote that we went over, right? Or, no, we haven't gone over the quote. But we will, I promise you. But the publicity, you're starting to get it out. You're starting to, this dirty little secret is getting out. So we have to, they say, change it. If the dirty little secret wasn't getting out, would the U.S. have reacted? Probably not. So a lot of this we have to look at. The U.S. trying to keep their own reputation, right, during that time. All right. Okay. So, of course, we have our exam coming up. Is everybody understanding about the whole deal? Okay, no, we don't. But anyway, we have an exam coming up, don't we? Okay.